to dive into the questions. I have some questions collected that other people have given me over whatever, but I'm going to address the live questions first. So what was your first BDSM experience? Interestingly, and I think it's probably this way for a lot of people, my first BDSM experience, I didn't know I was doing BDSM at all, and I didn't even really know BDSM was a thing. I was probably 20, 21, something like that. And yeah, we did the whole tied to the bed, like DS sort of scene, you know, the power play. We had no idea what to call it. We had no language. We were just like, oh, this is something I read in Penthouse, you know, whatever. This was before the internet, you know, before the internet, it really existed. No, before the internet existed to public people, because it was probably 1980, 90, maybe 91, something like that. So that was my first kink experience. I thought it was awesome, but we were just sort of like fucking around, literally. And it was very awkward with that partner. We didn't have the language. We didn't have the framework. We didn't have the education. So I shelved kink for the most part. I mean, there was a little accidental dabbling here and there until I was in my early mid 30s, and then picked it back up. I dove the hell in. All right. Oh, you don't like what I do? You love what I do. Thank you. I'm just gonna see if there's been any questions over here on TikTok. Make sure I didn't miss anything. No, I don't think so. Okay, so I am going to start. I'm gonna pick from my basket of questions here. Oh, by the way, before I get into more questions, Sophia Darling is in the chat on Get Vocal, and on TikTok, Sophia's SP Sophia, SafiyA. Sophia was our guest on the last episode of American Sex Podcast. This week we had a hiatus. It was fucking fabulous. Please go listen to it. AmericanSexPodcast.com. Yeah, it's so good. So good. As a sneak peek, I interviewed also TikTok Sir Ezra, who is the educational director at Sanctuary LAX Studios in LA. We had a really great conversation about mindfuck. So that should be coming out Monday, unless there's a timely thing in the news that's happening that might, I don't know if it's going to bump it. I'm not sure. Everything's up in the air right now. So yay. Do I still read Penthouse? No, I don't still read Penthouse. That was like, how many years ago was 1990? 30 years ago. So yeah, no, don't still read Penthouse. So let's dive into this one, because this is one that I've actually been talking about a little bit this week. Is oh, where's the fucking question? Wait, hold on, it's here. It's about scenes gone wrong. Now I can't find the question on my big list of questions. Okay, scenes going wrong. This is something that I very much encourage, especially new people and old people alike, to account for. Because when we teach kink, we teach it in a very pristine framework. Like, well, if you do your negotiation, you fill out your yes, no, maybe list, and you do your doop, everything's supposed to work great. And that's not real life, right? Things go wrong. So oftentimes when you're first negotiating, you might get asked, like, what things trigger you? You might not know. You may get asked, what kind of aftercare do you need? If you're new, you might not know. These are things you have to sometimes find out in the field while you're playing, and you can find them out the hard way. One thing that I highly advocate that everybody plan for, even if it seems to be a scene that on the surface seems to be a simple, straightforward scene that you're doing with somebody, is to have a trigger plan. What happens if, and recently this week, somebody wrote me saying that they were doing a scene with a partner, and they threatened to tickle the partner. And the partner was unexpectedly triggered, and it, had a big blow up and a negative outcome. And so I highly recommend a trigger plan, because I don't know what the circumstances were leading up to this one thing. Let's say they didn't negotiate. So the one partner didn't know tickling was off limits. That's kind of a no-brainer. Like, okay, have some better negotiation and really bring up those things. But let's say either, they forgot to bring that up in their negotiation, or they agreed to tickling and then they found out the hard way when it started being threatened that it was an off limits thing. Have a trigger plan where you shut everything down, where you go into comfort and processing mode with your partner. And don't think that's not going to happen. That unexpected triggers happen to almost everybody. I mean, there's no absolutes. I would probably venture to say everybody at some point, but again, 99.99% of people. So that's that on that. I got something really cool I want to show you, and I forgot to, let's see if I can reach it. If I go over here, I got all this shit in the way. This is like the most inefficient way to go over there, but it's the closest. So let's see if this works. I got a new book. Oh, ouch. That I love. I fucking love. So Princess Callie, who owns Kink Academy, and I should have put Kink Academy link in my links there, because that's one of the best places right now to learn about kink. It's a kink library of over 2,000 videos from, close to, 250 of the world's best kink educators, including myself. And it's really worth it. And I have a link that I get a little something if you use my link to sign up for Kink Academy. But aside from that, I don't get anything from this. So Princess Callie, who is the head, she considers herself the head mistress of Kink Academy, but she founded Kink Academy, has this workbook, Authentic Kink. And I've been eyeing it for a little bit because I really like her style. Her and I are both very much into humiliation. We both teach humiliation. She wrote one of the few, if not the only books out there on humiliation, enough to make you blush. I don't think I have it. I think it's over on that bookshelf there. So I was really curious to see what her beginner kink stuff was all about. It's amazing. So Authentic Kink, I would say don't make this your only kink book if you're new. However, this is a good companion piece if you get, people say, oh, my lips are captivating tonight. Thank you. If you do the recommended where you get the new bottoming book and the new topping book and maybe SM 101, Jay Wiseman's book, this is a great companion piece because it forces you to ask yourself questions and to think and to do your, the first person you negotiate with is yourself. So to do a lot of introspection and self-reflection to figure out what you want. I also very much appreciate Callie's teaching style. I often talk about building a scene based on emotion. What emotion are you after? What, how do you want to feel? And making that goal emotion what you do, or breaking it down to the emotional lowest common denominator. She has a very similar philosophy that she calls a kernel kink, like you boil it down to the simplest little emotional kernel, and some exercises to figure out what those emotions are, so highly freaking recommended. So y'all are quiet tonight. You said my lips were captivating. Do you have more questions? Any more questions? No? All right, I'll pick one out of the hat. Here's a good one. Oh, this is a very long, could be a long answer. How can BDSM relationships be abusive? And this is actually, thank you, Mr. Sting. Love my hat. There are lots of ways BDSM relationships can be abusive. The most stereotypical example that we tend to think of is an abusive dominant, because they're the ones that are domineering. They're the ones that are telling you what to do. And granted, there are lots. Yeah, that's a thing. There are just as many abusive people in kink as there are in the default world. And if you've tried online dating and, meeting different people, there's a lot of jerks out there. There's a lot of jerks in kink. We're really not any different in that regard. So it's important to be able to recognize what abuse might look like in a BDSM relationship, especially if you haven't joined community or you don't have other kinky friends where you can talk to them and say, okay, this and that happened in my scene, or my dominant or my submissive told me this. Does that sound right? Oftentimes when we have vanilla friends that we are bouncing these things off of, they don't really understand the foundations of kink. So to them, everything is abusive. To them, everything is, oh my God, girl, call the domestic abuse hotline or whatever. So there's a lot of graphics that you'll see floating around on the internet, and I encourage you to just Google, BDSM versus abuse. So I'm just like taking off of one of the graphics that has excellent information. First, BDSM is always consensual. You follow established rules. You negotiate for the safety and health of all partners involved. You are doing it for mutual pleasure and enjoyment. You have safe words or safe signals or ways, agreed upon ways to stop the scene and stop the action if something goes wrong. It's about that pleasure and that connection with another person. And BDSM should not involve drugs or alcohol, at least not to the point where you're severely compromised or inebriated. A lot of people play in a way where drugs and alcohol are completely off limits. That's the way I prefer to play, but I know not everybody does. Abuse, on the other hand, is not consensual. If someone's calling me names, like let's pretend I'm a submissive because I'm not, but if someone's calling me names, I can control how that is happening and my feelings and my reaction to it and the outcome if it's negotiated as part of a scene. But if someone's calling me horrible names in the middle of a fight, that is not consensual. It doesn't have rules. There's no guidelines. There's no rules. We don't know what's going to happen next. It's not negotiated. Abuse is used to terrorize and to control. And granted, sometimes we are doing that in our BDSM scenes, and this is where it gets murky, because I always say a good dominant, and I'm a very psychological player. This is where I play, okay? A good dominant who has the ability to manipulate your perception of reality in a positive way can create better scenes for you. But on the same token, those are the same skills that are used to emotionally blackmail, to gaslight, so when you have developed these skills, you have to be very ethical in the ways and the circumstances in which you wield them. So that's very much important to remember. And if I am doing a scene, let's say it's a fear play scene, and I want to terrorize and frighten and control my submissive, the thing that's missing is, it's consensual, it's negotiated. We're doing that in a safe container. We can step away at any time. In abuse, the victim of the abuse or the survivor of the abuse cannot stop it. It is all about non-consent. It is all about ultimate power and control. Another thing they say is you should hurt your submissives. Consensually hurt your submissives to their specifications, but you should never truly harm. The difference. And abuse oftentimes involves substances. Somebody's, hi, the brat. I'm just looking over here at TikTok. But some of the other ways, abuse can happen in any layer or level of BDSM. There's been a lot of talk this week about, how people in submissive situations might be abusive. They could, use their codependency to the point where they manipulate. They could be, when you look at people with narcissistic personality traits, there is the overt narcissist who's, grand and over the top. Those characteristics you would normally associate with somebody who is dominant, like my way, I am, worship me. And then there's the covert narcissists that oftentimes use self-deprecation. I am an asshole anyway, aren't I? Well, I don't deserve blah, 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 don't I? And they enact their narcissism that way. So you can absolutely be abusive, whether it's emotionally or even any role or any level of BDSM. How do you stay safe on dating apps? That's a good one. Hold on. Recommendations in the media, recommendations for rope bondage instructions. I'll do that first. I'm going out of order. Recommendation for rope bondage instruction. First of all, I never teach rope. I can barely tie my shoes. Because of my learning disability, I have coordination issues, and tying is not something that but one of my good friends and colleagues and educators, Midori, who is fabulous. Look at Midori. She's also on TikTok. She's Planet Midori on TikTok, or I think almost all social media, Planet Midori. I would look at Midori's shibari and rope bondage instruction and start there, if that helps. But I'm not really great at knowing all the nitty gritty because I am just not a rope person. That is not one of my specialties. All right. How to stay safe on, yes, Midori. Yay. How to stay safe on dating apps. Got scammed on a dating site. Yeah, there's a lot. Violet Blue wrote a book, and I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's basically how to stay safe and protect yourself online. Granted, yes, that book is probably 6 or 7 years old now. So there's going to be some outdated stuff, but a lot of it still applies. Like, whether it's using encryption, making sure your location stuff isn't turned on, that sort of thing. If you're meeting up with somebody, I normally, first, before you meet up with them, I am a fan of social media. So if I meet someone, I look at, do they have a Facebook? Do they have a whatever social media, Twitter, whatever it is, even FetLife. Do they have friends? Do they have a good give and take with people? I see, how do they interact with people? That oftentimes tells me, is this a real person? Or is this a real person, but they're an asshole and nobody likes them and they're giving me some vibes, so yay! So that's the first thing. If you've established, like, I think they seem legit from everything that I can see online. And again, I definitely recommend Violet Blue's information because they know the exact tech end of everything. Have a safe call. If you go out for a meeting, meet at a coffee shop. Don't plan to play on that first date. Have a safe call, like, hey friend, if I don't call you within 2 hours, something's wrong, or call me at a designated time. And if I say, maybe I'll say like, oh, how is your dog recovering from surgery, or just something random, right? Maybe that's the signal, like something's fucking wrong, do something. Or if I say something else, that means everything's going great or whatever. A Smart Girl's Guide to Privacy. Thank you. That is it. Thank you. Violet Blue's A Smart Girl's Guide to Privacy. So check that out. Let me see. I should jump on the Made Cat Girl trend with my beanies. Yes, I love ear beanies. I'm like really getting into them. I don't know. I think it's because now we live on Zoom and everyone just sees my head. So, might as well do it up, right? So let me see here. Got any more questions? You got scammed on a dating site. Anyone who got that can write it. I can't remember what I was saying when you wrote that or what that's in reference to. Yay, it's my favorite kink educator. That's me. All right. I'm caught up. Okay. So let me catch up on Get Vocal here. Bad representations in the media that portray kink abuse, almost everything. I mean, that's one of the things when we did our TV show, we tried as hard as we could to give real representations. And even as an executive producer and somebody who, created this whole concept and was the writer, and I pretty much had my hands in every pot, it was so hard to fight with the network and to fight with the production companies and to fight with all of these people along the chain of command. That's like, we'll get more pretty white girls in there with fake tits, you know? And it was like, oh God, I mean, every day was a fight. So, you know, I know our integrity. We had a team of 3 producers that were kind of a united front, and we shut a lot of shit down. Were there some things we had to compromise on? Yeah, I would say we did a pretty good job though. But I'm like, you know, for your average person that doesn't know much about sex positivity or kink representation, producing TV or whatever it is, you know, I can see how things very easily go sideways. Let me just see here. Could you please spell out the rope reference? Oh yeah, somebody did below, Midori. Also, Midori is on TikTok now. Maybe I had something to do with that. She's Planet Midori, so PLANET MIDORI. You know, I was having a conversation with somebody earlier this week about the representations that we have in kink and why. I was actually on a podcast, so you'll hopefully be hearing that soon. And here's the deal. Kink is up here. Kink really is all about the mind fuck. And I don't mean like, you know, psychological edge play mind fuck. I mean, just like, I'm kind of manipulating your sense of reality or your perception of sensations, or even if it's something on a small scale, it's all up here. You know, the biggest sexual organ is the brain. That we say that for a damn reason. And it's especially true in kink. And so when we're trying to portray that in the media, think about, you know, psychology. What do humans want? They want the flashy, they want the sensationalized, we can't show what good kink is because it doesn't make good media, whether that's TV, whether that's writing, whether that's anything, movies, you know, whatever, erotica, right? So that's a problem. We go for the flashy. And then we think about, what do we see in kink? You know, it's what we see in all media: thin, white, stereotypical, man dominant, women submissive, you know, all of those things we've been fed that are not the way things are. And they're not the way things should be, but we see that and we emulate it. So then that bleeds into our kink, and that bleeds into what we do personally. That bleeds into our communities. It's, you know, it's much bigger. It's a whole societal problem. It's patriarchy. It's, you know, it's a lot. It's a lot. All right. Let me recommend. Okay, hold on. Let me make sure I'm caught up on the comments here. Yes, we got a yes over here on TikTok. Midori's here. I was just shouting you out, Midori. Oh, you just bought your first vibe. Thank you for making you feel normal. You're welcome. Yeah, they were asking, like, where do I learn rope? And I was like, I can't tie my own shoes. Learning disability, spatial awareness, not coordinated. Find Midori. That was my answer. Hold on, there's a lot coming here. My girlfriend just got an under the bed restraint system at Spencer's, but I don't really know how it will change things up besides the fact that I can't touch. Does it open up new positions, new possibilities, and how can I learn more about them? So I don't know which specific under the bed restraint system you have, but I'm just going to, you know, make an assumption. It's kind of a basic, you know, arms, legs sort of thing. And tools are only as good as the imagination that you put into them. The tool doesn't give you the experience. And I think a lot of us, you know, especially in the day of mass marketing and media, they market like, oh, look at these paddles. Look at this beginner kink set. Get into kink. Buy this beginner kink set with fuzzy handcuffs and a feather and a blindfold and a riding crop. But you get it home and it sits in the drawer because none of this came with it. You need the inspiration, the creativity, the know-how, that sort of thing. So, Midori popped in while you're writing a book chapter. Yay, you're using me. That's fine. You have blanket consent to use me anytime, Midori. So when you are using a restraint system, think of a scenario that goes with it. So when somebody is restrained, it messes with your sense of proprioception, right? So it's like, we know if this part of our body moves, this part of our body moves in response. It's, you know, what makes us aware of our bodies in space. And when we're tied up, it messes with that. I would definitely say, just being tied up, that's fun. But especially if you're new, you want to do things that really capitalize on the sensation play and the sensory deprivation, because you've already deprived them of, even though it's not really a sense, but you've deprived them of their movement, their autonomy, what they're used to doing. What can you couple that with? I would definitely couple that with a blindfold. So now suddenly you have your person splayed out on the bed and they're blindfolded. So now every sound, your footsteps slowly around the bed, the way you sigh, anything, those all become like, oh, what's going to happen next? They all become sexy things. Like when we're doing BDSM, we're playing with up here. So I would definitely encourage you, like, yes, look at the mechanics of your particular system, because I don't know what particular system you have and what the Spencer one or whatever is, or Sport Cheats or whatever you said it was. But think about how that can be a tool in a bigger experience. And if you think about it that way, instead of just looking at like, well, there's these things hanging out of our bed, we'll get in, guess I'll tie you up, I don't know what to do next, really plan ahead. And I think that would help. And I hope that helps. How do you get out of them safely, or if there is an emergency? I don't know, that particular style. Some are Velcro. They're super easy, right? And a lot of times the beginner ones are very easy to get in and out of. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was like soft and Velcro, easy peasy. If you're doing something that, let's say you're using a pervertible at home and you have a necktie, or, some saran wrap around or something like that, always have a pair of safety scissors handy, because that's something where it's like, even when you tie a knot in your shoelaces or something, you're like, I can't get this out, same sort of thing. So make sure you always have safety equipment on hand so you can just boop. Voluntary loss of control is a popular desire. Yes. I mean, loss of control in all sorts of different ways. And why? There are many different reasons why we want to give up our autonomy to another person. I mean, that could be a whole semester 101 course of like, why do we like loss of control? And that's a huge foundation of BDSM. And you're expressing a microcosm of that with that cute little under the bed restraint system. What's my take on internet relationships? Honestly, I love them personally, but there's just caveats everywhere. It's also very easy for people to take advantage of you on the internet, especially if you've never met that person or whatever. There's a lot of vetting that you can and can't do. Safety shares. So that's always a consideration. With that said, read Violet Blue's book. For ways to keep yourself safe and make sure that, people can't find out where you live. And if it's a, complete stranger you're having a dynamic with online. But I love online play because the dungeon is now virtual, right? And it's mostly up here. And when your dungeon is up here, you can do anything. You don't have to plan for, if you're like, I want to role play that, I don't know, you're mud wrestling with in panties because you're a sissy or something. I don't know, whatever. You can make that happen. I really like phone domination and phone play for that, because it really is story. It's the art of the storytelling and the story arc that you can really employ. But even when you're playing online, there's plenty of tools. I have a podcast episode. Let me find which one it is. On long distance play. I have so many good tips and tools and websites where you can find to play games together. There's writeforme.org, where if you want to have your for whatever, there's a website that allows them to type it where they can't copy paste, and there's like little interactive games and things to make it a little more exciting and timed things. It's writeforme.org. There are a ton of different things. I'm trying to find the episode. It is episode 124 of American Sex Podcast. And there's a lot of great information there. And I think that, you know, COVID sucks, quarantine sucks. I'm not going to say, oh, great. But one benefit we got out of it, at least for kink and sexuality, is that we can start thinking outside of the box, and that we can, you know, do some of these imaginative things. Because as I said, it's all up here. You know, kink is all here. And a flogger is a tool. Under the bed restraint system is a tool. Sex is a tool, and they are the things that you're using to carry out what you've come up with up here. So when we're playing virtually, whether it's by phone, by Skype, by you know, text message back and forth, and playing orgasm control games, maybe over the course of a week, where it's like, tonight you're going to do this, and I'm going to text message you, and if in 5 minutes you don't text message me back with what I say, then I'm going to punish you with that. Like, there's so many, it forces us to be creative. And I think we need more of that. You know, because sex is all about, or not sex, kink, it's sex and kink, but kink specifically is all about play and creativity. And if Midori, if you're still there, I always tell my folks that your definition of kink is my favorite definition. And every time I teach, I say what it is. It's childlike play with adult sexual privilege and better toys, AKA cops and robbers with fucking. And that is all Midori. That's not me. But that is kink. That is kink. You know, as an educator, I study other disciplines. I study improv, storytelling, neuroscience, all sorts of different things. And I overlay them onto kink because we don't have those areas of discipline within kink. So I have to overlay them. And one of the things that I've studied is the neuroscience of play. And there's a book by Dr. Stuart Brown. It's called Play. And then there's a subtitle, and I can't remember what the subtitle is, but that's what we're doing. We're playing. So if you're a tabletop role-playing gamer and you play Dungeons and Dragons, apply those same principles to what you're doing in kink. I've often described kink sometimes, especially if there's a role play element, as like, you know, LARPing with fucking. And LARPing is live action role play. So people make fun of us geeks, like, you know, you run around the forest with fake wooden swords and pretending you're blah, blah, blah. That's LARPing, or you're pretending you're vampires or whatever. But really, that's what kink is. That's why we enjoy it. Oh, I'm your favorite kink educator. Thank you. There's been a whole bunch of comments. Hold on, let me catch up with where I am here. Yes. Okay, wait. Hold on. It makes potentially unsafe fantasy safer. Yes. You know, we're all about now with the media and our brains wanting to sensationalize everything and be edgy. We are drawn to those activities that are edge play. An edge play or any of those activities that could potentially be harmful, even if you do everything right, they're still risky, right? And with your imagination, you can do those unsafe fantasies. I remember I talked to somebody. I did an episode of body storytelling. If you listen to the body storytelling podcast, it's the last story I told probably like 2 or 3 months, maybe 3-4 months ago. And I was doing phone domination for a while. And that really got me into what I could do with my imagination. I remember I had this one client that I talked to that was just amazing. He was a disabled man, and he had these fantasies of being controlled and being like forced by, and, you know, wearing panties and things. And I had this fantasy where I had like the whole football stadium railing him, and it's like, we didn't have to nobody had to have a safer sex conversation. Nobody really had to do, it was just all up here and on the fly. And you can't get that in real life. I find myself a sub in person, but online I'm so a dom. It's fun. It's fun. Have you ever heard of an O-nut? Yes. An O-nut is a thing that goes around the base of the peen. And I'm saying like not the exact words as much as I can because TikTok is a little fickle about words. But it fits around the base of a peen. So like if someone is larger and maybe it hurts their partner, bumps their cervix or something, it gives, makes it not, go in shallower, but the person with the peen still feels enjoyment because they have something around the base. I don't know if there's a cheaper alternative. I think Onut is one of the few I've seen. So I hope that helps. Let me see. Long distance kink. Yay. I'm way behind. Oh, you love to hear my kink. It's so interesting. Hold on. See, that's why you get drawn into my content. Okay, let me see what the questions are here. Okay. You need to know what you're doing with homemade toys and their potential for breaking and what's safe to use on what part of the body. Yes, I did a Get Vocal with the company #open. So if you go on Get Vocal and look at #open, find their account, you can see a replay of it. And I think it's also on YouTube, talking all about pervertibles. And yeah, that is a safety risk. You need to know, if I hit somebody with this, is it going to break and splinter? What are the additional safety concerns I have when I'm using a household object and repurposing it for kinky play? And depending on what you're using, some of those things could be, a little edge play, or at least risk-aware consensual kink. Like, we know if we try to use this, it could go sideways and someone could get hurt. But let's try anyway, because where are the risks? Let's see. Messenger video chat option. Yeah. Yep. All right. Let me see what other questions. I have a question. How do you feel about the odd kink like bestiality? Bestiality is not good, because animals can't consent, and it's illegal, and lots of other reasons. However, I don't know if you are conflating that with animal role play, which is doing nothing to glorify bestiality. But animal role play is really popular for way different reasons. It's because somebody said in the other chat, people like to relinquish control. And when you're role playing something like an animal, or even somebody who's younger, there is a part of that, like, I am relinquishing control and I am now a being that needs to be nurtured or taken care of or told what to do. So that's the appeal of those things. It's not about being an animal or, being a child or, being attracted to those things. It's more about the headspace of where you go. Yeah, LARPing and kink is very, very similar. Oh, I'm glad you found me too. Okay, hold on. Let me get caught up here on some questions. Yes, I've done a lot of online breeding kink stuff that in real life would be consequential. Exactly. Like, a breeding fetish is, being with somebody intimately with the purpose of getting them pregnant. And as a fantasy, that's super hot. There are ways you can role play this where you're not really doing it. But if you're actually bringing a child into the world, not because you wanted to bring that child in the world anyway, and it just so happens to fit in with your fantasies, like the purpose of the child being brought into this world is your kink, that's fucked up. But yeah, you can absolutely do that in fantasy. Just pretend. All right. Go back to writing your chapter. Oh, cool. Chapter for sex therapists on BIPOC people that are into kink. Awesome. Yay. Thank you, Midori. Thank you for stopping in. Just catching up. Yes, I will always be a facilitator of people's procrastination. I saw somebody ask about pet play. Hold on. Yeah, not bestiality at all. Honestly, my boyfriend and I met on a Discord gaming server, and we just started talking about our interests and views, and it all built into dating, and we were friends for the first year. Yeah, like meeting people online. I mean, one of the questions is how to meet people online, and that is just so individual. It's like, it's same as how do you meet people in real life? Oftentimes you need to just find a way or a platform or something to facilitate you making a real human connection with people. And it doesn't have to be on a dating site. Like here, Harley was like, it was on a Discord server, random. You know, there are a lot of people that, you know, met their partners playing World of Warcraft or on like a, you know, cooking website page on Facebook or something, you know. So it's all about establishing connections with people, and you can do that anywhere and in many different types of ways. Hold on, let's see. Primal play relating to people with anxiety. Oh, yes. I saw that you, I think it was, or it was somebody who had the same question, asked about how can primal play help relieve anxiety? And there's lots of ways. And I probably will make a video response to this too, because I think it's a good one. But one of the ways is it completes the stress response cycle. And actually, a lot of kink can do this. So I'll tell you what I mean by this. And, you know, this theory goes back to a lot of like therapists that apply somatics in their practice, which is like what's happening to the body and regulating the nervous system. We'll talk about this sort of thing. So the stress response cycle is when you look at like evolutionary biology, our nervous systems were created to save us from imminent threats. So way back when, before the internet, before kink, I mean, maybe kink's always been around, but an imminent threat might be, I'm out hunting and gathering for my family, and all of a sudden, a tiger starts chasing me, right? And suddenly, boom, you run, you kick it into high gear. So what happens? Your nervous system, your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems do all sorts of things. So your sympathetic nervous system is you know, the one that you can't control. So what it does, it's like shuts down digestion. It makes your heart start pumping faster. It optimizes your body to survive, to be able to spring in the action, to think clearly, make quick decisions, and get out. It's the fight or flight. But in this respect, it's flight, right? But it could manifest these days, you know, we talk about fight, flight, freeze, fawn. So that response that was built in us to not get chased by a tiger, now in our modern day is tripped up by like, oh my God, there's some asshole on Facebook posting about Trump on my page or whatever, or holy shit, I can't pay my bills, or oh my God, I got a flat tire on my car, or whatever it is. Our normal daily stressors are now tripping that fight or flight or freeze or fawn that used to have a purpose, and it's got nowhere to go. So back then when we got chased by a tiger, we literally ran it off. So once we got done running, two things happened. We were either lunch because the damn thing caught us, or we got away. And the act of like sprinting into action actually had physiological effects to calm our nervous systems down and get us back to a resting state. But now when our student loans trip that, we have no resolution. So a lot of people say kink in general can be used as a resolution. Normal resolutions might be something physical, like you go work out, you do something physical, you go running, you get on your treadmill, whatever. It could be meditation or yoga, that sort of thing. It could be doing something creative. You know what? I'm going to just drop everything and do my hobby that I'm passionate about. I'm going to paint for an hour and get that, or I'm going to write. I'm going to do something creative. I'm going to do something where I really use my brain and enjoy it. And those are things that replace the running off. We don't always have that. So kink can serve as that purpose. Long story short, primal can really serve as that. It is a direct way back to the source of, I really am running. Tiger's actually my boyfriend. He's going to fuck me real good. But it's the same sort of thing. So that is a way that primal play can really help quell if you have that you know, generalized anxiety all the time, because you're constantly in this state of I'm being chased by a tiger and you have no resolution for it. That's your resolution. So I hope that helped. All right. Let me see what's going on in the chat. Let's like side conversation in the chat on Get Vocal. What time is it? We got 10 minutes. All right, a little bit. Let me see what's going on here. Let me see. What do I think about Call Her Daddy? I don't know. What is that? Is that a movie, a show? I don't know. Tell me what it is. I'm not sure. Bye, Gary. Gary left. Okay, 62 new messages. Hold on, I got to catch up here. So you're saying acting like an animal. Yeah, like actually tapping into like that. You're growling, you're like, you know, for some people, and I'm not an expert in primal play, nor do I play that way. But, you know, for some people, it might look like a hunter and prey, where you know, I'm going to chase you. And maybe right now I'm the dominant, but if we kind of fight it out, maybe we're kind of switching mid-scene and we're going to see who comes out to win, sort of thing. So it is, you know, what the word is, it's very primal, down to your primal kind of lizard brain, lower level brain thinking and base emotions. Like there are 7, like neurologists will tell you, there's 7 core emotions that are intended for survival. And I have them written down because I don't remember them offhand, but you know, it taps into those 7 core emotions that are in like our basement brain that are just, you know, knee jerk. This is what we need for survival and happiness. Hi, Nixia. It's hard for me because I feel how they feel during. Is that odd? I'm not sure what that's in reference to. I'm kind of losing, like, because I'm reading the comments out of order of when we were talking to them. Let me just see here. Depending on... Wait, what podcast made a joke? It's a podcast and I don't support them. I don't know. It looks like maybe you're not saying the podcast. Oh, Call Her Daddy. Okay. Oh, it is a podcast. I haven't listened to it, but I heard about the how they made all this money and They seemed a little not really sex positive, just from the little bits that I was exposed to them. I've never listened to more than probably 10 minutes of an episode just to check them out when they were in the news, but I wasn't impressed. Helps offset the tunnel vision. Thank you. Yes, Primal play with anxiety. And I will make a video about that because I think we need to talk about that more. Primal helps my level of anxiety because the pack is so high, or the peak is so high, and the low is so normal or gone. Yay, it was a helpful answer. Promotes females taking on more of a dom role and being in control of their own O. Yeah, and that's a whole nother. Hi, Sway. That's a whole nother. You love my education. Oh, thank you, Dr. Carlton. I love your content. Go follow Dr. Carlton. Good ass content. Literally good ass content. You'll find out when you see the content. What are my favorite podcasts? Okay. I have always been one of those people that I'm not a big consumer of media. So way before this was my career, I was in advertising for 17 years. And for a portion of that, I was a TV ad buyer. And I bought all of these, big time ads on these big time shows. Did I watch any of the shows? No. I produced a TV show without really, I've never subscribed to cable. Same thing with podcasting. I have a podcast. I produce a podcast. I'm about to be doing a second podcast, by the way, with a therapist, Kate Lurie, which is going to be awesome. Stay tuned for more on that. And, but I don't listen to them myself. So I know for Kink Off the Cuffs, a Kink and BDSM podcast is generally pretty good. I've been on a couple episodes. I've listened to a handful of more episodes of that podcast than probably any other podcast, which still isn't many. They're pretty good too. Of course, one of my favorite, American Sex Podcast, is the best podcast in the world. That's my podcast for those people who don't know. Let's see. What were we doing on time? We got 6 minutes. We got more questions? Let's see. Anyone else? Anyone else? Feeling alienated from my peers? Yeah, it's hard to find a social group. And Harley has a great suggestion, it sounds like this is a chronic problem in your life. And yeah, like therapy, counseling, life coach, it may be at that point where that might be something that could definitely help you. Kayla Lords and John Brownstone is the couple. Okay. How do you think sexuality correlates? Hold on. How do you think sexuality correlates with sexuality? Like, how does the mind? Oh, sexuality correlates with kink. Okay. I was just working on this section of my book today. I'll give you my spiel, okay? We have sex. Oh, you have NBLD, yay. We have sex for two reasons, for procreation and for pleasure, okay? And I would venture to say that most of us who are like, I'm interested in kink and I bought a thing, aren't like, because I want to make a baby. So I'm going to say we're all in it for the pleasure aspect. And if we're in it for the pleasure aspect, that takes genitals off the table. We no longer have to put, slot A into tab B or tab A into slot B or whatever to make a baby, to procreate. So when we start looking at sex as pleasure, that is a very subjective definition. If we're still looking at it as sexual or sensual, sensory, physical pleasure, that could really be any part of the body. And I think that is what kink is so good at, because it removes the sex from the genitals and it brings it all over our body. It brings it up here. It brings it out into the ether, into the virtual world, wherever we want it to be. So like for me, I just did a couple of posts, one about responsive and spontaneous desire, another post about asexuality, gray sexuals to be specific, people that sometimes feel like they're more on the asexual end, and then sometimes they have traditional sexual desire. For me, kink is not sexual if I'm using the definition of sex and it makes my genitals tingle. I very rarely will mix sex with my kink. I may mix sex with my kink if it's sex for the other person and I'm being the top and I am performing or providing for that person. But me having genital pleasure while I'm practicing kink, it's like those two things do not go together. No. But am I still having erotic pleasure from kink, even though nothing is happening in the pants department? Yes. Because I derive pleasure from the power play. And that's not a way we're used to thinking about sex at all. So I think, going back to your question, we need to redefine what is sex. That's where what is pleasure? What is eroticism? If we remove those definitions to not just be in our pants, suddenly, wait, are asexuals kind of being sexual? Like maybe. Like where does that line cross of like, this is no longer sexual or erotic enjoyment. This is just enjoyment. So that is a way of answering your question without answering your question at all, because it's so subjective. And I think that's how sex and kink play together. For some people, their kink is very closely tied to their genitals. Like if they are experiencing pain, if they are experiencing being dominant, like dominating another person, that enjoyment that they get out, the same enjoyment that I get out of it, like I really enjoy it. And it is on par with the satisfaction I would have from sexual pleasure. But it's not pleasuring me genitally at all. It's a different thing completely, but it's like equal in importance, if that makes sense. But for some people, they're wired where that satisfaction they get from dominating someone, let's say, like I get, instead of going right here and it's like, I'm satisfied. That was good. I like that. For them, it goes right here. And then they go, I'm satisfied. Now I want a blowjob or, whatever. So we're all wired a little bit differently, but I think that we all would benefit from expanding our definition of what sex and erotic pleasure means, because it has a lot more meaning and it encompasses a lot more than we think it does. I am going to hold on just a second. I'm going to end the broadcast very quickly. So I'm going to end Get Vocal. I'm going to say good night, everyone. Stick around. I think we're going to have a little after party, but maybe not much, because I think something's happening. I might have to go. But thank you. We'll be back in another month. I don't have the exact date. I think it is, let's see. It's probably going to be December. I'll announce it. Probably December 16th, I'm thinking, we'll be back again with another Kink Q&A. Thank you all for joining me. I think I'm going to shut down on both platforms. I usually love to after party, but shit's going on. There's things happening. So thank you all. Mwah, mwah. I will see you again in a month. But I also go live on TikTok probably at least once a week. So Get Vocal, folks. If you're not on TikTok and you miss seeing me live, come join TikTok. You'll get notified when I go live, and I do it a lot. And thank you. Mwah.